of the evolution of political bribery. You know, Richard Nixon and Spiro Agnew both took cash bribes in the White House. With Nixon, it was Jimmy Hoffa. It was when Nixon was vice president. Jimmy Hoffa bringing in a briefcase with $500,000 in it saying, you know, get me out of the Sun Valley land prosecution, which Nixon did. They dropped the prosecution just before Kennedy became president. And, you know, and then a group of milk producers allegedly came in and gave him a $500,000 bribe in cash. Similarly, Spiro Agnew had been shaking people down when he was the governor of Maryland, and he continued those shakedowns in the White House. He ended up resigning. Well, both of them resigned ultimately. Well, since then, bribing politicians has gotten a hell of a lot easier since 5 Republicans on the U.S. Supreme Court have legalized it. The peak of this was obviously Citizens United saying that, you know, money is not actually money. It's, and the First Amendment says that the government can't impede free speech, so the government therefore can't impede money that rich people give to politicians. In other words, bribery is now legal. But in that context, it all had to be done, you know, via things like super PACs and PACs and commissions and things. Well, that wasn't enough for Donald Trump. I mean, he has collected hundreds of millions of dollars that way. In fact, he's now collected hundreds of millions of dollars for his inaugural committee, and then his inaugural, you know, I mean, they spent just a tiny fraction of that. He gets to, as far as I can tell, keep the rest of that money. You know, he's been a small-time hustler throughout his career, you know, selling Bibles and sneakers and steaks and vodka and Trump water. I mean, all kinds of weird stuff. And he expanded those schemes in 2016 when he first became president, you know, selling other things. But in fact, remember back in 2000 when he said, and I quote, "It's very possible that I could be the first presidential candidate to run and make money on it." Yeah. Well, after his son-in-law got $2 billion from Saudi Arabia, and his company's made an estimate of $4 billion during the 4 years he was in the White House, it appears he's decided that the small stuff is for pikers, and he's going to crank the door wide open to serious tens of billions of dollars in money. First, he and Jared are working with several foreign governments. Judd Legum has a great piece about this over at popular.info this morning. Bulgaria, they're going to be building a hotel there. Vietnam's our 4th largest trading partner. So if they're building a Trump Tower in Vietnam, I'm skeptical that we're going to see any tariffs on Vietnam, right? I mean, this is blatant. But then he kicked the door to corruption even wider. A fungible crypto asset is something that presumably has value. You know, in this case, they're claiming collector value. That is, you know, in limited numbers because it's on a blockchain. In other words, each one is individual. Each one has basically an individual serial number. Would be a way of thinking of it. It's a metaphor to describe it, but I think it's a pretty reasonable description. So there's only a limited number of them. And so what Trump has come up with is this dollar Trump coin, $TRUMP. And Melania has one, $Melania, which is essentially just a digital picture of Donald Trump with his fist up and the words fight, fight, fight. It has no underlying value whatsoever. It's not based on a cryptocurrency, even though it's traded on a blockchain. It's not based on cryptocurrency. It's not based on gold. It's not based on anything other than, hey, we want to give money to Donald Trump. And so far, it looks like he's made about $8 billion off this thing, or at least that's what the market value of it is right now. And the bottom line is that this is a really easy way for anybody who wants to bribe Donald Trump to do so. And because this is traded on the Solana blockchain, which is public, essentially. I mean, you can look at the blockchain and you can see the transactions that are happening. Trump can see who gave him money, so he knows who to do favors for. Now, you and I don't know we can't see that. Here's how it works. What the blockchain does is it records transactions between digital wallets. And each digital wallet has a long string of numbers or numbers and letters associated with it that identifies it. So if I wanted to bribe Donald Trump, I go to him and I say, I'm going to buy $1 million or I'm going to buy $1 billion worth of your tokens. And here is this long, 20 some odd digit, whatever it is, number that represents my wallet. So when you see this amount of money showing up on this number, you'll know that's me. And then I buy the tokens, and now Donald Trump can sell those tokens instantly, on the market if he wants, off the blockchain, and put that money in his pocket. Just fill his money bin with it. And I don't have to be an American citizen to do this. I could be a foreign government. I could be Vladimir Putin. I could be Kim Jong-un. I could be President Xi of China. Pretty much anybody can shovel as much money as they want. Well, right now, up to $8 or $10 billion, and they're going to because they produced 200 million of these things, and they say that they're going to produce another 800 million of them to create 1 billion of them, in the next 3 years. So every year of his presidency, they're going to roll out more opportunities for wealthy people and foreign governments to bribe Donald Trump personally. And he doesn't have to share this with Jared. I mean, this isn't like the $2 billion that Saudi Arabia gave Jared, or the $1 billion that they gave Steve Mnuchin. He doesn't have to share it with anybody. Alexander Hamilton had some thoughts on this, our first Treasury Secretary. He and James Madison, and John Jay wrote 3 of them, I think, but he and James Madison, by and large, wrote the Federalist Papers, which was the sales pitch for the Constitution back in 1787, 1788. Excuse me. Got to think for a minute here on numbers. But anyhow, Alexander Hamilton wrote, evils, he's writing about, the president being bribed. He said, evils of this description ought not to be regarded as imaginary. One of the weak sides of republics, among their numerous advantages, is that they afford too easy an inlet to foreign corruption. In republicans, persons elevated from the mass of the community by the suffrages of their fellow citizens to stations of great preeminence and power may find compensations for betraying the trust. Hence it is that history furnishes us with so many mortifying examples of the prevalency of foreign corruption in Republican governments. How much this contributed to the ruin of the ancient commonwealths has already been delineated, which led to them writing into the Constitution the Foreign Emoluments Clause, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8, that says, and I quote, no person holding any office of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of Congress, accept any present, emolument, office, or title of any kind whatsoever from any king, prince, or foreign state. Now, what's interesting is Hamilton didn't think that this applied to the president. So to solve that, and the Supreme Court has never ruled on the Emoluments Clause. So to solve that uncertainty in 1966, Congress passed the Foreign Gifts and Decorations Act, which specifically identifies the president and vice president and says they can't take gifts from foreign governments without the consent of Congress. But enforcing that law would require, presumably Pam Bondi to investigate and prosecute Donald Trump. And she's made it fairly clear in her confirmation hearings that she has no intention of ever challenging Donald Trump. So, and this is, part of just a sprawling collection of internet and blockchain-based crypto operations that the Trump crime family, particularly his two sons, are undertaking. Wendy Siegelman has a deep dive into them over at her brilliant Substack newsletter. So Trump in his inaugural address said that he's beginning a new golden age in America. Well, it won't be a golden age for you and me. It's going to be a golden age for Trump's money bins and pretty much nothing else. What say you? 17 minutes past the hour.